Hey guys, welcome to another Monday morning update with Rozella, Steffani and Rozella over in Spokane, Washington. Hi ladies, how you doing today? Okay, we were talking off screen a little bit about some fun topics. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, I know we had chatted just briefly about Airbnb homes and how they had the sale on those. Ton of people were buying up homes and wanting them to become Airbnb homes. They thought they had a great location or a great idea. This is so cute. And some of those plans may have not worked out necessarily. And so they're not profiting maybe, or maybe the location didn't really look some of them, I don't know why they thought that location would work, to be honest. But anyway, so we wanted to chat about what would be a good idea lender-wise, maybe for those people, so that they could then turn that Airbnb into something more profitable and useful. We want a financial overview of some options for people that bought an investment property that might not necessarily be shaking out the way that they had hoped or dreamed.
Well, it's funny you should ask that question because we find ourselves with one of our rentals in a very similar situation to that. So there you go. Yeah. So I think you're correct. I think that a lot of people got into short-term rentals, Airbnb, and a couple things happened. One is that some communities in particular, as you know, we have an office in Hawaii, and the whole North Shore of Hawaii has basically banned Airbnbs because of the issues around Airbnbs. You get people in there that are partying and they're leaving trash, and the people who live there do not like it, and they get fed up with it, and so it goes. And in our condo down in Scottsdale, the same thing has happened there. The condo facility itself has basically said we don't want to have Airbnbs in here, although they still do have them. What's that knowing look for though that you have right now?
What look?
Rosella went, yeah, like she had a maybe.
I can't. I have a thought. I have a really good friend who lives in Hawaii, and she grew up there, and she had a great time in Hawaii, and it had to do with an Airbnb actual, like, oh, that's what the reference was. Okay, I forgot. Yeah, and so I was just thinking of this accident or this horrible thing that had happened at Airbnb because of an Airbnb guest in Hawaii. And so it just made me think, I was like, I never thought of it from that standpoint. I didn't realize they had banned the Airbnb. So I was
North
like,
Shore. Yeah,
it just makes
yeah,
sense.
there you go. And so our little story is I wanted to do a little foray into short-term rentals, and we being my wife and I had never done Airbnb before, which is kind of where you need to play if you're going to do short-term rentals. And so we bought a little condo in Pensacola. Actually, it's called Perdido Key, Florida, which is a great little condo in a little resort that has a tiki bar and a great pool and all the amenities that you think you would want. But we're not good at managing short-term rentals. It's just not something we know really well, right? So our cash flow has not been what I thought it would be. So we're those clients that you're talking about. Now, what do I do with this guy, right? And there are options. So I'll talk about it both from the investor perspective and maybe from the lending perspective, because we do need to address both. Options are to do a different kind of rental. So you can certainly convert to a long-term rental opportunity with somebody. Typically, the income is going to be a little lower with long-term rental, and you might have to live with that. And you may have to have maybe negative cash flow, and not many investors want that option, right? But that's one option. At least you have some cash flow, and it's better than nothing. We do medium-term rentals with traveling nurses and people of that nature through, I think Teresa normally uses a site called Furnished Finders for that. And we get very high quality tenants, and they're in there for 3 months to, one of our tenants has been there for, I think, over 2 years in one of our units. There are some stipulations around that. You got to move out for a minute and then you can move back in to satisfy the short-term rental thing that they're dealing with. But they're not short-term, they're medium-term, high-quality tenants. They're furnished, and most of the Airbnb things are furnished, so it's an easy transfer to that. And they're there for 3 months or longer, typically, and almost all of ours extend, it seems like. So that works out really well. And you get more rent, yay, from a high-quality tenant, as I mentioned, that has good income. But still, you have to manage it. And the Florida's a long ways away from Seattle or Scottsdale, where we're at. So we have taken the opportunity here to talk to a lady who wants to do a lease option on this place. Lease options I love them. We've worked with them for years, both having lease optioned and also being on the option end of it on a property or two as well. And the advantage there is you get a long-term tenant. We talk to them and treat them as if they're going to own the property because that is their plan. So that means that the management responsibilities for things that go wrong, like plug toilets and things of that nature, are on them, not on you, the landlord. And that's worked out really well for us. This lady toured the condo with us not too long ago and fell in love with it. I mean, it's a cute little condo in a great little location. The pool and everything is just very attractive. So I think that's probably going to work out for us in our situation. And if I was in another situation like this, I would probably lean that direction if I wanted to minimize the management responsibilities and increase the cash flow and get a pretty good option consideration up front, which is non-refundable if they don't buy the property and stuff. So there's some options from the investor perspective. Questions around those?
Yeah. So when you do a lease option like that, how you just mentioned that there's a non-refundable deposit essentially. If they give you, so let's just say it's like a $300,000 purchase, say they give you $10,000 upfront. With those funds, is that held in like a trust or an escrow account until they would then purchase, or is that then for you to utilize as the current owner?
That's a really good question you're asking. I suppose state laws may vary on that. Typically, those funds are non-refundable and released to us immediately. So we use those. We don't put them in an escrow account because they're non-refundable. Unlike the security deposit that we get for our tenants, which goes into a different account because we need to hold those funds separate from the operating funds.
So then secondary question to that deposit, is that also then in place of almost a down payment since it is a lease to own option? Or
well,
then
it's certainly, yeah, good question, Stephanie. It's part of the down payment because those funds, the lease option consideration funds, which is the down payment in essence they put up front, although they're non-refundable if they don't buy it, they're completely applied to the down payment if they do buy the property, and it's targeted for that.
And how long of a term do you typically put people in when they are in a lease to option?
That's another great question. I have learned from experience that a longer term is certainly better than a shorter term because people need time to prepare for the purchase for a variety of reasons. So actually, I'm looking at terms now in 5-7 year range with people. I know a gentleman who does a lot of lease options who puts about 10 years. And the reason he does that is because it gets through the housing cycle, because housing prices sometimes dip and they can't buy them when the price is down, but they come back. Housing always comes back. That's my opinion, of course. But look at the data, look at historical. It just does, right? So you got to get through those periods, and 10 years typically will do that. So 5-10 years, something like that, is kind of a long-term play. And then it's structured in, the thing about lease options is they're very, very unique to the situation, and you can do anything you want that works between you and your option person, right?
Okay.
You can set a strike price, it's called in another area, a purchase price that's higher than your given price right now, and they can purchase it anytime within a particular period and hit that price. I typically like to give them incentives. So I do a 4.5%, 5% increase from the base price right now every year. It goes up. So that gives them a little incentive to buy a little earlier because it's going to be a little cheaper than it is going to be in 3 or 4 years when it has that 4% added on. And I also have learned we put a portion of the monthly payment. Our lease payment is somewhat greater than the rental payment would be because I'm looking for cash flow, right? And so a portion of that payment also goes toward the purchase price, unless they're late, and then none of it goes to the purchase price. So I really want to encourage payments on time. You can do anything you want when that reading, as long as it's legal, of course.
Do you typically structure it as well that every year there's some sort of an amount or deposit that is then also issued to you to keep them motivated?
That's a good idea. I haven't done that, but that's a really, really good idea.
That's an idea for sure.
That is a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So questions around the tenants or the landlord investor side of things before I move on?
I think my final question would be is obviously, I mean, even though you haven't done it already, has done like an annual amount or deposit that's then withheld or received, is then once it does come to term, so say you did a 5-year, at the end of that 5-year, they obviously now have the option to purchase, assuming that there's probably another amount of money that's then due at purchase time. So say it would be another $20,000 that would then act as their down payment, I'm assuming. And is that correct in how that works? And then what happens if then at the end of their term, say 5 years, they don't want to buy or they're not able to buy? Is there a penalty, or what's your process for that?
Yes, any money they built up goes toward the down payment, and if they need additional funds, they need to have those funds. So what I do, given that I'm in the mortgage industry, is I pre-approve them up front with our lease options. I get credit, I get income, I get all that kind of stuff, and then I know why they can't buy right now. And it's usually income or credit, one of those two things, or maybe they don't have the down payment that you're referencing. And so we talk about how to deal with that situation and prepare for the purchase and set them up for success. That's the goal here, right? And it may be that they need to save up some money in addition to their option consideration for the down payment. It usually is credit related, I find. So maybe they need to deal with that credit situation, and we have ways of helping them. We have a credit repair company that we can send them to. We can just guide them in proper payment history and budgeting and stop making those late payments and stuff like that, right? And prepare them for that. And then it's up to them, because I really been very clear with our lease option tenants that you could do this if you do these things, but if you don't do these things, you're not going to do this, and you're not going to get your money back. So do this, right? And they're all very, we're going to make it happen, because everybody wants to own this home, and I treat them like they're going to own the home. So when they get to the end, to address your latter part of your question, if they can't exercise the lease option, then they can lose all of their option considerations gone, or we could choose to renegotiate. And usually I'll give them the option of renegotiating to see if they want. Most people don't exercise it because of something they've done or a life change. I found this person I fell in love with and I'm moving to New York City or whatever, right? That kind of thing. So see you later. I'm out of here. And most investors that I know that do lease options, the worst thing that can happen, they exercise the lease option. The best thing can happen, they don't exercise, they move out, I find somebody else, I do it all over again, right? Because it's a good cash flow situation if you're an investor with properties.
Sure. Okay.
Perfect. I hear your lending side.
So lending side of things, okay. We do have loans now for short-term rental properties that are based on short-term rental income. Having said that, there's different ways we'll look at that. Just know that. But usually, for the people who purchase short-term rentals are going to purchase them in a complex or an area that allows for short-term rentals, and it's a really good short-term rental area. There's amenities around, or maybe it's a condo-tel over in Hawaii or something of that nature. It just makes sense. Then we'll take a look at the information. It's usually, there's a site called AirDNA, which is affiliated with Airbnb. And when you go on AirDNA, you can see historical income and what seasonal income and all that is for short-term rentals, because the data comes right off of Airbnb. And we'll use that information, and the appraiser will use that information. And then depending on the income and the lender and all, there's slightly different calculations, but we can still get more income out of it because short-term rentals kick off more income typically than long-term rentals, right? So you can do that going in. If you find yourself in another situation where you do a lease option or something like that, from the lender's perspective here, you have to be careful of a few things. The lender will typically allow that option consideration to go to the down payment because it's designated that. I don't get too much in the weeds, but you need a lease agreement and you need a purchase agreement, and they are separate agreements here, but they're tied together. And the purchase agreement notes that the person put this down as earnest money, basically, right, for the purchase, and we can apply it toward that. And also anything greater than the rent. Now, I've had situations when some of my investor friends who do lease options give them credit for all the rent going toward the purchase price. And typically, as a lender, we won't allow that because it just doesn't make sense. So we will allow anything greater than the normal rental value to go forward, and then we look at the normal rent. And then the last thing is, if you want to qualify for a loan as an investor and you own an investment property and you put somebody in there and you're renting it to them in some manner, short-term or lease option or whatever, so that the rental income is higher than the market rental income, we will typically allow that if you can have proof that you've been receiving that income for a particular period of time. And that can vary, but it's usually a few months at least, certainly a year. If somebody's been there for a year and you wanted to refinance a property and the rental income was $3,000 you were getting, but the normal rent was 2,000. Normally we wouldn't allow that on a purchase because it's not sustained. But if you can show it's sustained and you're refinancing, we'll allow that. And the other thing is, of course, it's going to be reflected on their tax return. So we're going to see that income there. Some of the ins and outs there. You want to be kind of careful when you're the borrower and you're looking for a loan on a property that has higher cash flow, that you do it right.
Could you use somebody else's, like, I guess, past rental history? So say like the previous owner that you would be purchasing from, can you use their rental history to utilize for that program?
I think that would be possible. I don't know that I've done that before, so that's a good question. I think so. If you
Okay.
had a rental history that you could verify, I don't know if the previous landlord's going to let you do that, but if you could verify that that property had generated that much income, and you had a lease agreement with the new tenant that was the same income, yeah, that's a good argument with an underwriter. I would try it.
And they wouldn't allow it.
Because sometimes other previous owners can't release that financial
That's true.
information, but
Yeah, might be hard to get that information. Yeah.
yeah, oftentimes with investment properties, or at least with the investors that I've shot for, they oftentimes want to see a proof of the rent roll, essentially, so that way they can verify. However, it doesn't mean that people are always honest, and I've seen people generate some that are not actually accurate, but
You're like, there's no way.
for the most part, I would say, that's pretty accurate to what they're receiving. So I was just curious if you could utilize that.
On the short-term rental market, we typically get that information because the new buyer wants to see what it's been generating. And so short-term rental owners typically release that because they need to.
Yep. Good to know.
Yes, indeed. So you guys going to go out and buy some short-term rentals? Is that the plan here?
I think I would actually my focus would be more of like a mid-term rental. Long-term seems great.
However, guess what I heard about for our industry, which would really help if you had a short-term rental. Our Sacred Heart Hospital is going on strike in the next upcoming week or two. They're our #1 trauma unit in the area. We have Deaconess right next door. Deaconess plans to strike the following week. So our area, that right now their plan is to shuttle in scabs for work.
Oh.
And so they got to stay somewhere.
There you go.
Yesterday. Interesting.
I guess that would be an opportunity as long as the strike lasted. And then once the strike is done, you're going to have to do something with that rental.
For 2 weeks, get ready. You're going to be rolling hot. Roll hot. Thank you for answering our question.
Yes.
Always. Pleasure to chat with you ladies as always. Give us a call, guys. Contact information will be on the screen as always. And just a little plug, we can thank Brittany, our marketing person, for that, who is the person who edits these little videos and sticks them on YouTube. So thank you, Brittany, for doing that. We appreciate it.
That's all the fun faces that we like to give her.
That's right. Let's give her a thumbs up today. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Bye.
That was fun. That was nice. Good job. Anything else?
Nothing. We're going hiking. See you later. Bye.
Make Stephanie happy. Go hiking and have fun.
Okay, bye.